It's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Stacy Schaefer. She has a PhD in anthropology. She has done a lot of field work since 1976. I was 5, she was already doing field work with the Huichol Indians in Mexico, and she's definitely a pioneer in this area. Maybe you know some of her publications, such as The People of the Peyote, Huichol Indian History, Religion and Survival, which she published in 1996, co-edited with Peter First. She also has a more recent book from 2015 titled Huichol Women, Weavers and Shamans. And even more recently, a book that won a few awards, Amanda's Blessings from the Peyote Gardens of South Texas. And she's a keynote speaker at our track, and it's a great honor to have her. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, I've never used one of these things before. Great, thanks. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for coming 9 in the morning on a Saturday. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank Bia very much for inviting me and for organizing the plant sciences part of the conference. I think it's very valuable, and I'm so glad that Peyote is in it this year. And I also want to thank MAPS and the Beckley Foundation, too, for making this happen. So I've been working with the Huichol Indians since 1976. And more recently, I've also worked with peyote on the border with South Texas. And so this is from my research, my experiences, et cetera, over a number of years. So I first really had an opportunity to get to know the medicine, as it's called Hikuri among the Huichols, when I went on the Peyote pilgrimage in 1986. And I was really taken by the shaman who had allowed me to take photographs, and they were very open and very kind to me as I went on the pilgrimage with the temple group. And afterwards, I was handing out photographs to people to give them copies, and another shaman came up to me and he says, "You take these pictures, but you never ask why to the peyote. You never ask why. And I'll tell you," he said, "peyote is everything. It is the crossing of the souls. It is everything that is. Without peyote, nothing would exist." And that was really profound. And taking my anthropologist hat off, I was going, okay, there's a lot more I need to know about this. And so I'm going to talk about various aspects of peyote, and I look forward to the following speakers to elaborate on things as well. So the Peyote Habitat is not a very large area. It is in the thorny landscape of Tamaulipan thorn scrub in the north. Let's see if I can point this out here. Okay, so here's the border with Mexico, and this is South Texas into West Texas. So it's all the way around here, and it comes all the way down into northern Mexico, all the way to the Mexican state of San Luis Potosí, and this is its native habitat. In South Texas, and I lived there for over 8 years, and I had a chance to go down to the peyote gardens and talk with dealers and go to church meetings at Mrs. Amada Cardenas's house. And she lived in Mirando City, and this is the area in general where a lot of the peyote had come from that the dealers had harvested for members of the Native American Church. And then, of course, Huichols go, they live up in the mountains in the Sierra Madre Occidental, and they go on a pilgrimage. It's over 300 miles east to Wirikuta, which is their sacred land. So as far as we know, the earliest evidence, perhaps, of peyote appears in ancient sites from Coahuila, Mexico, to the lower Pecos region in Texas. And there are these amazing rock shelters with rock art in them. And there has been work that has been done by Carolyn Boyd. She just came out with a beautiful book on the shamans, white shamans cave. And in this area, they have found necklaces of dried peyote strung bead-like on a fiber cord. Some of these date back from 800 AD to as early as 6000 BC. And we also know that in Shumla Cave, which is probably the best studied of it all, another researcher, Martin Terry and his team, examined an old peyote that had been excavated, and it turned out that it actually was a composite of plants that were mixed with peyote and then made into a peyote effigy, which was really so surprising to everybody because they actually thought it was peyote. And then we know that, according to Carolyn Boyd, that some of the art that you find in these rock shelters, she believes are powerful images of peyote-related experiences and beliefs. Here's another one. It's a Panther rock shelter, and she's taken me to these places, and if any of you get a chance to go out there, it'll blow your mind. Later on, peyote was, it believed, expanded the knowledge of it, and it was traded in pre-Columbian times, just like salt and obsidian were. Then in this area, this general area that's very basic to where you find peyote, it's called, the tribes that lived there were generally called Coahuiltecans, and they existed there as early as about 11,000 years ago. And they were described by the earliest time by Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, who was a Spaniard and a conquistador, and he came through and he kind of got lost. And he roamed this area for 8 years. And so he did write about these people, and he and other Spaniards who came after talked about ceremonies in which peyote was used. And then as far as the Huichols go, well, their use of peyote dates way back to, and the earliest documentation, though, of Huichols as peyoteros was by Carl Lumholtz, and this picture was taken in the 1890s, and these are peyoteros who are coming back from Wirikuta, and then contemporary times. So there's been a lot of continuity among the Huichols and their peyote traditions. And again, this is where they go in Wirikuta, and so different Huichol groups go to different areas in Wirikuta. This is a very sacred mountain, Raunaji, which is used to be mined by the Spaniards, and more recently there's all this confrontation and efforts by the Canadian mining companies to, again, mine the area, and it will just really destroy the environment and all that is there. So back to the United States, though, when the Spanish missionaries, military, and settlers settled into Texas, the Indian groups in the lands where peyote grows either died from diseases, or they contracted from Spaniards, or were displaced. And so that's where, at the time when Comanches, Kiowas, and Apaches were pushed further south as they were trying to remain independent, and they were most likely, as the theory goes, introduced to peyote and forms of the peyote religion. Once the Southwest was integrated into South Texas in the middle 1800s, these indigenous people were rounded up and put into Indian territory in Oklahoma. And that is where the peyote religion, it's believed, then spread like wildfire. And Quanah Parker was a Comanche chief, a very major figure in Comanche resistance to white settlement and the tribe's adjustment to reservation life. He believed that peyote religion should be legal, and he forged these diplomatic relations and business relations with the US government as well as with cattle ranchers. And he was so persuasive with his dealings with them that they allowed him to procure peyote from Mexico. And in one communique, he arranged to have 8,000 peyote plants brought to him for his own use. It wasn't until 1918 when the Native American Church was actually incorporated and became a bona fide religion recognized by the federal government, and that peyote was the sacrament that was used. And Mooney, James Mooney, who the picture is, he was an anthropologist working for the federal government, and he started in the Kiowa area, and he was one of the first to attend a peyote meeting, and he realized how sacred and how important it was. And so he also rallied with some of these roadmen to make this happen, in 1918. And perhaps some of you will recognize people here. Well, Richard Evan Schultes, along with Kaya Roadman, Bel Kosad, and Weston Labar. Richard Evan Schultes actually got his start by working with Plains Indians and studying the use of peyote. And Weston Labar then wrote the classic Peyote Cult, which is still, I read it and it's so dense, but it's really good. In any event, Schultes wrote a groundbreaking article about the healing aspects of peyote, and it's called The Appeal of Peyote. And he wrote of the therapeutic value it has, and some of the myriad of medicinal purposes that peyote has been reported to effectively treat are arthritis, congestion, headache, knee pain, fatigue. It's a tonic for good health. And in Texas, this is my dear friend Amada Cardenas, who was the first federally licensed peyote dealer to legally sell peyote to members of the Native American Church. And she was a healer in and of her own right. But a lot of people would go to her place to get peyote, to have their ceremonies on her property, and they still do today. And so I wanted to just read a quote from a Southern Arapaho roadman about peyote and the peyote gardens. He says, "It's where to come get peyote. They call it the garden because it's where magic grows, but it don't look like no garden. All thorns, stickers, and everything. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. You know, a lot of times I'd go out there and take a smoke and find this peyote, be just in the garden, feel like a good blessing. Make it down there for a certain reason. Somebody's sick or something like that. Take this medicine home. Have meetings for them." And Weechels also recognized the healing properties of peyote, and it has been in the Western world recognized for its analgesic properties, and Weechels use it also in microdoses to assuage hunger and thirst. Laboratory studies point to antibiotic qualities of peyote. I can attest to that through my own bioassays, and I always get stomach problems when I'm in Mexico, and it just takes care of it all. Peyote also has been reported to increase growth hormone, GH, and that's recently used. Doctors have prescribed GH to those older people who are deficient to increase vitality. And it's also been, research shows that it increases immune response to cancerous tumors. So all good reasons why it is called medicine. It's also been documented that it helps recovery from alcoholism, from drug problems. It helps people under the guidance of a shaman or with a roadman to resolve personal problems, and you can't underestimate the spiritual awareness that it can also bring to individuals. So I'm sure I might be preaching to the crowd, but I think a lot of you know this, so I'm going to go through it real fast. That peyote contains more than 60 alkaloids, and mescaline is the one that is in abundance and has many kinds of mind-altering experiences come from this. The way that this works, as neurobiologists have studied, is that in the brain there are cells called neurons which function to transmit and analyze sensory information from the outside world, and the neurons communicate information with one another. In order for the information received from the outside world to go to other neurons in the brain, one cell communicates with the other through the synapse. And within the synapse are chemicals called neurotransmitters. And when the synapse becomes active, neurotransmitters are released and travel to molecules called receptor sites. So with psychedelics, and mescaline, of course, is within this category, they're chemically similar to naturally occurring chemical neurotransmitters in the brain. And so mescaline interacts with the serotonin system and involves sleep, mood, appetite, and possibly depression. And mescaline closely resembles transmitters of norepinephrine and dopamine. Norepinephrine affects emotions, engendering feeling states such as love, hate, joy, and sadness. And dopamine pathways are related to reward-motivated behavior and hormonal release. Dopamine neurons are linked to motor abilities that serve to make thoughts and perception in accord with the reality of one's mundane environment. But there's still so much more that needs to be known about all of these alkaloids that are in peyote, how they interact with each other, and how they interact within the body. And then there's also isoquinolines, which Sasha Shulgin, near the end of his time on this planet, was published an amazing book about isoquinolines, and these are known as monoamine oxidase inhibitors in the tissue of peyote and other cacti. So they become orally inactive, the alkaloids, normally, but with peyote consuming it, the isoquinolines might also have some effect that's going on here too. So as those of you who are peyote wise know that there's a lot of visual stimulation that happens within the first 3 hours of ingestion. You normally see these geometric patterns that scientists would say are related to the discharge of neurons within the eyes. I like the fact that Huichols have meaning that they put onto this, and these designs are so important that women are required or highly encouraged to duplicate these designs in their artwork, especially in the embroidery, because these are gifts from the gods, and it's for them to share with everybody. And then if you have enough peyote, it's strong enough, you have this kind of tunnel effect, which is Huichols also will show in their artwork. And eventually you get to a state of lucid dreaming. And so this is where naturalistic images of people, animals, plants, and landscapes are perceived. The gods come and talk to you. You have a one-on-one conversation. It's usually with Kayumari, who is the deer god. And in addition to all of this visual stimulation, though, it also stimulates other parts of your senses. So with auditory, one Huichol shaman talks about the sounds of the wind, music, and song, along with voices that are amplified and perceived differently. And he writes, "For about the first hour, I don't feel anything. Then my voice will start to feel strange, and I won't understand very well what people are speaking. Then I will have a very strong urge to play music, so I will play my violin. I will listen to music coming out of the air, pure air. Then I'll be feeling that the air is coming down like a cloud that is being lowered onto the earth. Soon I'll be able to hear anything very close and clear, but I'll hear things differently than they normally sound." And also gustatory, or your sense of taste, olfactory, your sense of smell, and tactile are all things that are indeed affected by peyote as well. But what is people don't keep in mind very often is that there are other plants that are used along with peyote. Tobacco is a huge one. Nicotine, like mescaline, can indeed activate, inhibit, or block the transmission of synaptic receptor sites in the central nervous system, and nicotine is also able to trigger the release of norepinephrine. Among the Huichols, there is Nicotiana tabacum, which is kind of like the tobacco that we're familiar with that you buy commercially. But then there's also Nicotiana rustica. And look at how high the nicotine level is on this. It is so strong that it is not smoked all the time like regular tobacco. It is used for ritual purposes, and oftentimes it is smoked in conjunction with consuming peyote. And some of the things that the nicotine can also help do is it can help one focus. And so not only Huichols, but in the Native American church ceremonies, that the first thing you do is you have a smoke and you pray. And what it does is it helps you focus, and it also, if you are starting to feel really strongly from the peyote and you would like focus again, you take a smoke. And that's what Huichols do too. So a couple more quotes one from a Huichol shaman. You pray that you will get something from it, the peyote, that you will gain more knowledge, see things that get nauseous or vomit. And then when you smoke the makutse, which they call this particular tobacco, you will not feel so empeyotado, or the feeling from the peyote. Even if you eat lots of peyote, you will not feel it that much. It makes you feel it very gently. That's how people do it. Because of if you eat peyote, you feel differently sometimes. Sometimes it's gentle, sometimes it's very heavy. And then you hear things from far away, people talking from far away over there. But with the makutse, no, it lessens the feeling of being drunk with the peyote so that you come down. That's why they smoke. You get the urge to smoke when you eat peyote. And then a member of the Native American church recounts her experience, and she had the role of water woman. And so she was coming in the morning to provide water for everybody who'd been up all night. And she then talks and prays over the water and for everybody in the teepee. So she says, you know, when you go into prayer, it's like chaos. I did not know what I was really going to pray about. The main thing that kept coming to me was the peyote. I ate peyote all night, so I was peyote affected. So I started talking about the fire and the fireplace. That is the process of life, and it led up to the peyote. And the prayer just came out, and it linked. You know, it related to the whole altar there, and then I prayed for the people. So she was able to focus herself and was able then to have this amazing sentiments that she was able to express for the people. Makutse is so important to Huichol Indians that when you go on the peyote pilgrimage, the single most important thing that goes with you is what they call the wainuri. It's a little embroidered or woven bag that has the first cuttings of Makutse in it, and then it has a shaman's plume here, and this has to go in front of everybody, of all the pilgrims, everybody, going to Wirikuta and coming back. And just shows you the intricate link between tobacco and peyote. Other plants, well, first, need to talk about shamans because they are the botanists, they are the healers, they are the pharmacologists, and they psychologists and religious specialists. They are well versed in holistic aspects necessary to prepare the body, mind, and soul of individuals for their journey with the peyote into other realms of consciousness. And that there are different kinds of peyote. And my husband's a botanist, and we've been to the Wirikuta, and we've been with shamans, and they've been pointing out to us the different kinds of peyote. And from a Western botanist perspective, he can't distinguish them because he doesn't have those kinds of guides of what they look like or how to know. But Huichols say that there's blue peyote, white peyote, mottled, spotted peyote, yellow peyote, and all of these reflect the colors of the corn. And when we were there, they gave me one of the stronger ones, and I only had two, and it was really strong, where they gave Jim, my husband, the less strong one because he was the driver. So there's things that they know that we just don't have a clue about, and I just wanted to point that out. As well as Huichols, whether it be the shaman, he will guide the people who come on the pilgrimage as to what particular kinds of peyote are good for individuals, and even families will harvest peyote and take it back to their family members who stayed behind, and their specific ones that they have for them. Other plants that are consumed, sometimes with peyote, maja kwaji, which is a barrel cactus, and it was explained to me that upon the direction of a shaman, some eat slices of the barrel cactus called maja kwaji along with peyote. And it helps with not becoming too empeyotado or too high with the peyote. And also that with slices of Ariocarpus retusus, that sometimes that's consumed with peyote as well. And what really surprised me is that this root that they find in the desert, and they call it uja, and it's this beautiful face paint. You grind it, you mix it with water, and so face painting is a very important part of presenting yourself to the gods when you're there. And they do consume pieces of this, some, with peyote too. And so one Huichol shaman said, the uja, this you feel with the peyote. You feel more, but it is different. It's not like smoking makutse. It does not lower the strength like with makutse. When you combine uja and peyote, it is as if they elevate you. They raise you up. Zoom! That's how I felt. I saw the whole world very small, very round. I was moving as if I were the sun. That's the way I saw everything. I saw the gods, where they came from, and where they reside. I saw everything. That's what happened to me when I ate uja with peyote. So I also don't want to give the impression this is only for adults. Peyote is something that children consume. They are not forced to consume peyote. They're encouraged. And some children really do have an affinity for peyote as well. And that's encouraged. And one man was telling me that when he was a teenager that he just ate so much peyote that he had a very close encounter with the blue deer, and that's part of becoming a shaman, is being able to communicate with Kayumari, the blue deer, and also being able to sing, to learn how to sing, and Kayumari teaches you that. There's also peyote in pregnancy. There's a myth about the pilgrimage to Wirikuta. And in it, these two goddesses become pregnant in Wirikuta. And one of them goes back and shares peyote to the community, and the other one stays in Wirikuta and becomes the goddess of peyote, which they call Wili Uvi. So that got me really interested about peyote in pregnancy, because I've been on the pilgrimage. I've even in peyote ceremonies up in the Huichol Sierras, and women who are pregnant are eating peyote. So I did research about this, and I found that in the 60s and 70s that scientists had done some research with laboratory animals, and they had found by injecting pregnant rats and monkeys, etc., with mescaline and then sacrificing them, they could see where the mescaline went. And they found that the mescaline could cross the placental barrier, and that the fetus did not receive as high a dose as the mother did, but it did feel it. And it entered the fetus. Its movement to the central nervous system did not appear to be restricted. Brain tissue of the fetus rapidly accumulated mescaline in high concentrations, and that the younger of the fetus was the greater the amount of mescaline that was passed to the brain. So some Huichol women can consume peyote throughout all of their pregnancies. Others wait till after the first trimester, but ones who consume all the way through tell me that if you go to the shaman early on, and he will fix you, he will help you and your fetus so that you will have a healthy birth. And I'm not encouraging people to do this. I'm just saying that I find this, they've been doing this for thousands of years. It must not be maladaptive, or otherwise they wouldn't do it. So since babies in utero also receive doses of peyote via their mother's ingestion of the cactus, it's challenging to think what effect it has on the cognitive development of the fetus. From 3 months onward, the primary sensory area in the neural cortex of the fetus's brain begins to develop. By 24 weeks, many of the neurons in the brain are present. The eyes are sensitive to light, the fetus reacts to sound, and in the 3rd trimester, there is a rapid brain development which causes sensory and behavioral capacities to expand. So one can imagine the kind of sensory stimuli a fetus is experiencing from the peyote. If hearing becomes more acute, sounds from within the womb take on different dimensions. Consider what a mother's beating heart may sound like under such conditions. Researchers also theorize that internal or external stimulation of the neural cortex of the fetus may help with the connection of neurons in the brain. It's been theorized that the reason newborns sleep so much is that 50% of newborn sleep time is REM sleep. REM provides stimulation necessary for central nervous system development in young infants. Some professionals believe that REM sleep provides stimulation that the infant does not get from the environment because it spends little time in an alert state. The earlier the stimulation, the better the child's central nervous system will develop, including cognitive abilities, reflex abilities, musical abilities, etc. Thus, peyote consumed by the mother appears to have a stimulating effect on the cognitive abilities of the baby. And one woman who's my comadre, who I've worked with very much, explained this to me. In Wirikuta, I thought we'd eat a lot of peyote to see what we could encounter, to learn more about our customs. So I ate 8 large peyote, and the peyote was strong. I got dizzy and then empeyotado. I never thought that I was pregnant. Kayumari, the deer messenger, appeared like a person and told me how I was feeling. He was talking to me from his heart. I think that Kayumari was talking to my son in my womb. I didn't think the baby would be a boy. Afterwards, the shaman said that he was given to me in Wirikuta by the gods, with our goddess Wili Uvi, the mother of peyote, so that our customs will not be lost. That is why he was born, why they gave him to me in Wirikuta, with me eating peyote. That's why he is peyote. I think he is peyote. He likes to eat peyote a lot. That's how some are born. So, it's really interesting to contemplate what is going on here with these perinatal experiences. I don't know how many of you heard Stanislav Grof speaking yesterday about the perinatal experience, and it transcends biology and has important psychological, philosophical, and spiritual dimensions. And the existence of authentic perinatal experiences, he argues, cannot be denied. If memories from the womb experience are part of a human being's unconsciousness, it is interesting to contemplate how peyote-related perinatal experiences could influence cognitive development and enable individual access to dimensions of human consciousness generally uncharted in Western culture. And Huichols even say that it may even predispose children as they grow to becoming shamans. So the wiring, the cognitive wiring might be very different, very enhanced. We don't know. And peyote is also passed on through the mother's milk, so nursing mothers will be exposed to peyote even after birth, and I've seen dramatic changes in kids when the mother's been eating peyote and then they're nursing, and they might have been fussy before and then they're really happy and they're looking at things, trying to grab things in the air and stuff like that. So these are all things that, and I know that with ayahuasca, that it is also consumed during pregnancy. So these are areas that also need to be looked at as well. So, Western science has much to learn from the ancient cultures such as the Huichols and peyote wise people who, as with the Native American church, have been learning and healing from the medicine for over a century. They have acquired an intimate knowledge of peyote and its effects. They have developed and fine-tuned an elaborate worldview that provides members with tools, rituals, set and setting to explore and heal their bodies and expand their understanding of consciousness and human existence. So in closing, and I'm not sure how I'm doing on time. Oh, okay, good. In closing, peyote is diminishing. I don't know how many of you are aware of this. There are more people who consume peyote in the United States than those in Mexico. And the larger amount of peyote is in Mexico. So, and the Native American church membership is growing. It has been. It's something that has really been an important part of people healing themselves and the desire to be healthy. So, as I've briefly mentioned before, that in the United States, peyote is regulated for members of the Native American Church only, and that people who are local Tejanos or Mexican Americans on the Texas border can apply for and get a dealer license. And Kevin, who follows me, was hanging out with the dealers for his research, but he'll be talking about something else today. But here's a dealer, and they're just showing you the massive amounts of peyote that are harvested and then sold, and there's just not enough to go around. It's hard to get access to the peyote gardens because it's private land, and it's a crisis situation. And in Wirikuta, well, more and more people are going down there to get peyote, and there's no regulation there really, and so it's getting ripped out from the roots. It will never grow back again, and it's very, very problematic. So I just wanted to end this for people to be aware of how serious this is by showing, if you don't mind, a 2-minute clip. And what's happening in South Texas is they're getting these root plows, and they're being encouraged by the state of Texas, these landowners, to use these root plows to go through their lands that will rip peyote out from the ground, never to grow again, and all the other brush. And then they plant buffalo seed to grow grass, and they graze their cattle. And that's what's happening. So, Jermaine? And this person who took this video was on top of a root plow, and he's very proud of it. This is in Starr County in South Texas. Pulling it up. Okay, thank you. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Stacy. For those of you who were in the opening yesterday, I hope you can resonate with what I said about the importance of the plant medicine track in the context of this conference on psychedelic science. And I think that Stacy's presentation summarized a lot about the message that we're trying to bring to this conference with this track, which is we need to hear traditional people. We need to stop thinking we know everything. We need to go back and look on what people have been doing in real world out there for decades or centuries. And it's a great opportunity to have you touch on these very controversial topics that nevertheless arise so naturally because you're talking, it's people's lives, it's people's traditions, it's people's rituals. So I'm very pleased that you brought this to us. And we're going to have a series of questions, and I ask the people to line up here and say their names before they make their question.
Oh, yeah. Stephen Gray. Hi.
Hi.
I'm not so much anymore, but I've been involved with been involved with the Native American Church for about a dozen years, and mostly in northwestern Washington.
Okay.
Bia almost answered my question in a sense, but you're addressing an audience of primarily non-native people. Is there okay? Let me back up just a second. The people that I know are very concerned about their medicine being corrupted. You talked about the conservation issue, of course, but also they say that when there's a lot of non-natives involved in the ceremonies, the energies get tangled oftentimes. So, here you are addressing this conference, this primarily non-native conference, and is there a way for people that are not part of that in the future to connect with and make use of peyote? I understand there are going to be a number of presentations today on that issue. And before you answer that question, just a quick one too. I've been told that by a native person that the term huichol is a sort of pejorative, derogatory term, that wisharika is the proper one. Do you know about that?
Yeah, for the second question first. Wijarika is the term that Huichols call themselves. Huichol is what the Spaniards called them because they weren't able to pronounce Wijarika. And I have used the two terms, one or the other, for referring to the same group of people. I've talked to Huichol people and asked them what they prefer to be called, and the ones I've talked to, they say it doesn't matter. Other ones who feel very strongly about their identity as Wijarika tell me Wijarika. But even the term Wijarika came about because it was a distinction that they made between themselves and others, where they, within their group, they call each other Tewi. Yeah. And as far as non-Native Americans, well, I've only been to Native American church meetings on the grounds of Mrs. Amada Cardenas's house. And that was a real meeting place of people from all different cultures, but it is predominantly Native Americans who go there, and their parents, their grandparents, maybe their great-grandparents have long traditions doing this, and I'm very respectful of that. And there can be problems when there are non-Native people who come. And it is really up to the roadman to determine who he or she, because I have met road women, would want to have or will allow into the meeting. And
no,
sometimes
it's just straight PowerPoint.
they don't want non-Native people in there. And that's for them to choose. And I would suggest for people who are not Native that you don't necessarily have to turn to somebody else's culture and traditions to learn. You can get good ideas, you can get guidance, but why not try things within your own cultural realm in helping you in understanding how the medicine can work for you? So that's my answer to that.
Okay, sure. I have a very short question, and
Yeah.
that is, my name is Colleen Lawson. Now I forgot my question. In the early part of your talk, you referred to a woman who has written about the topic of your conversation. You referred to her a couple of times, books that she's written, and I didn't catch her name.
Carolyn Boyd?
Carolyn Boyd.
Carolyn Boyd.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Good morning, Dr. Schaefer. Thank you for your talk. My name is Salisa. I'm a psychologist and a birth doula, so I'm very interested in the impact on fetal development, but I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you have any familiarity with the use of peyote in the birthing process.
Well, I understand that Huichol women tell me that they will eat peyote when it's time, when we're at full term, and they will eat peyote, and it will induce labor, and it is relatively painless. Not that much blood happens, and that's a pretty regular practice for a number of women. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Dr. Schaefer. I had a couple questions. What is the name of the book that you wrote about
Amada?
Amala?
Amada's Blessings from the
Amada's
Peyote
Blessing.
Gardens of South Texas.
Great. And also, do you have any suggestions, like the Cactus Conservation Corps, what we can do to help support the decimation of peyote? This
Thank
country.
you. Yeah. Well, there is an organization that Martin Terry and Keeper Trout have set up called the Peyote Conservation Institute, and it's based out of Alpine, Texas, which is towards West Texas. And not only are they doing research, but they're trying to promote conservation, and they are trying to get their network out to Native Americans as well, for those who may want to be involved with the conservation of peyote. I talked to some people from Morning Star Conservancy, I believe. Is anybody here from there? Oh, they're in the marketplace. Yeah, go visit them too. It's new to me what their efforts are, but again, it's peyote conservation, and the more that people are aware of it and start taking action, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And maybe somebody out here knows of other efforts to conserve peyote.
And Keeper Trout is at the Shulgin Archive table in the marketplace if you want to talk to him about his efforts and his research with Martin Terry studying the peyote populations. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Yeah, just wanted to add that today's series of peyote conversations in this room. So a lot of our stimulation was to bring the discussion about conservation of peyote to the realm of psychedelic science, because peyote is a psychedelic of the USA, and there is this whole hype. It's very trendy, the psychedelic movement, and nobody is discussing a major topic, which is a huge crisis in peyote conservation. So there's a lot of applauses for healing of psychedelics and very little knowledge about what is going on in this land. And that was part of the mission of this track, is to bring some indigenous representatives, and maybe they can make alliances with people that want to help, that want to have, funds and energy. And I invite you all to stay throughout the day with us in this room and follow the lectures.
Because peyote, it takes a really long time to grow, too. If you harvest it, pups, they're called pups, or little peyote will come out of the root, but it takes a while for them to get large. If you grow it from seed, it takes a very long time, too. It's not something that just can recover overnight.
Hi, my name's Nathan, and I was wondering how you feel about the place in Arizona that allows non-natives to drink peyote, and they do the spirit walk out of a ceremonial context, and also how would the indigenous or Native American people see it?
I don't know much about them. I don't know anybody who is involved with them. My feeling is, as long as they're not intruding upon Native American church ways, if they're being very conservation wise about the medicine, if they are good stewards as well as guides in this process, I'm okay with it. Yeah.
Hello, my name is William. First off, thank you for bringing all this information back to us from your pilgrimage. I have two questions. I'll try to word them as best as I can. Okay. I am aware that in the teepee and like these Dine or Mexico ways, that's very, very strict, and that there are lots of rules, and I'm not too familiar with the Huichole way. And I'm just kind of wondering, if there was any clash in ideologies or opinions between these two thought processes about conducting these ceremonies. And my other question was semi-related, if you could point me and everyone else in the direction of more information about Huachuma, like the ways and traditions around that. Just it's similar, different plant, but yeah.
Of what?
San Pedro cactus.
Oh, the San Pedro, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the first, again, what was your? Oh, the Mexica, yeah.
Versus Huichol.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've only been into teepee prayer meetings at Amada's place, and so it's really a combination of all kinds of interesting people. And there are people who they call themselves Coahuiltecans. And they are, I would say also they're Chicanos, born and raised in South Texas, who have gained this awareness or have reawakened this awareness in them. And they have their medicine ceremonies, sometimes with members of the Native American church, sometimes with their own. It all depends upon the fireplace, the roadman, the fireplace that he was given as to how he runs his meetings. And there is a wide range of that as far as how the ceremonies take place. Regardless, I find it very, very different to how the ceremonies are done by Huichols. And I think that history has a lot to do with it, that the Native American church is a syncretic religion that combines pan-Native American beliefs with Christianity. And that was the only way, I think, and it was a way that Native Americans kind of clothed the peyote ceremony so that it would be more acceptable to the United States to recognize it as a bona fide religion. But there are those elements, and so there are some very strict protocol for that too. As with Huichols, but it's different. I mean, we'd have to have a long conversation to compare and contrast.
Let's try to see if we can make other questions.
Good morning. My name is Yasmin. Thank you very much for this track and for the presentation. My question is, in your presentation, it sounded as though the traditional peyote use that you'd been exposed to in the Huichol culture was very democratic in the sense that it was consumed by men, women, and children.
Yes.
Can you comment as to whether there is a difference in the custom as to how it's administered, consumed by these different groups, men, women, and children, whether they sit together, and what the kind of the social breakdown of that looks like?
Oh, that's a very good question. Thank you. With Huichols, and it's been my experiences, are that men and women are a unit. They complement each other. And children are part of that. And it's been explained to me many times that they see family as a branch of a tree, and that as you get leaves and other branches that come out of it, you're all interconnected. And so everybody has the ability and is encouraged to consume peyote, but it's never forced on anybody. And so women may consume peyote as much as men. It just really varies, but there are no constraints as to whether women can or not, or whether children can or not.
Do they sit together in the rituals, or are there rituals?
Yeah, they sit together. Mm-hmm.
I'm Greg. It kind of ties in with the question there, but I'm just more curious about the indigenous, excuse me, the indigenous use and the frequency, and does it vary season to season, or is it more need-based?
Very good question, too. Well, with Huichols, they harvest their peyote and they take it back with them. So sometimes they dry it before they go, or they dry it once they get back if they can, because it's really an artist's task to go down there, and it is a really hard pilgrimage and come back. And so they hold on to it, and they will save it for various ceremonies related to peyote, and then sometimes they'll save a little bit that they'll eat if they're going to go work in the field, so like microdosing, so that they will have the endurance and the strength. But no, it's not like they're eating peyote every weekend.
Hi, my name is Bob. Can I mention the film? There's a film that came out about 2.5 years ago called Huichols, The Last Peyote Guardians. Are you familiar with that?
I haven't seen all of it, but yes, I am familiar with it.
It's this little plug. It's 2 hours long. It's in Spanish with English subtitles, and it follows the current problems with the Canadian mining companies coming in there and trying to completely destroy the habitat. And the website for the institute is cactusconservation.org.
Yeah, thanks for that.
I just want to wrap it up by perhaps asking you, Stacy, if you could comment on Labar's statement about peyote use. So I wanted to share with the public that, like, from inside the anthropological community, if you can talk about that, there's a big division of, like, anthropologists that would be critical of these substances getting out of the context of indigenous people, and others that study this process and are not so critical. So maybe you could comment on Weston Labar's position on this topic, if you feel pertinent.
Well, when I was raised in anthropology, as I was going through starting at undergraduate, the belief was do nothing to influence or change the culture you're working with, and realize that's impossible. And so anthropologists now, I think it's almost a obligation or a responsibility, considering the state of affairs for indigenous people, to become more active. And as far as their role in becoming gatekeepers for people that are interested in taking psychedelic substances and the traditional people that they work with, I will not be a conduit for that. If somebody comes and they're there, I will leave it up to the people themselves to decide how they want to interact with the people or not.
A big thank you to Stacy.
Thank you.
That and basic scientific research is a lot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there any evidence of reduced BDNF or GDNF on the onset of drug addiction or the excessive use of drugs?
Well, actually, it's like that.
Because that would make sense that ibogaine, kind of like you start using drugs, it decreases, then you get the ibogaine, it increases.
Yeah,
and you can
and that is a
very
very good point, because the thing is so complicated that actually when you are, it is known that when you have, for example, cocaine or morphine in animal models, that modulates, it changes the expression of the neurotrophic factors themselves. So having ibogaine is like another thing. I mean, the drugs of abuse themselves modulate the different expression of the neurotrophic factor. The point is that what is the general idea is that if you increase the GDNF in the BTA, that could be beneficial for the addiction. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you very much.
What's the current state of affairs in mental health and mental health care? We talked a bit about this in planning the discussion. We said, well, one of the things that was pretty interesting was a recent World Economic Forum Harvard report on NCDs, non-communicable diseases. And I thought, Paul, you were pretty passionate about this as a changing context. Maybe you could share some of your thoughts, and then we'll turn to Tom for some of his thoughts on the mental health side of that.
Thank you. I'd really be glad to, and it's a pleasure to be here. And thanks to Rick Doblin for his kind invitation and putting together this great meeting. So when we think about the burden